stop.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I'm Frank Clark. On behalf of my fellow board members, I want to thank you for coming today. Pursuant to the Bond Issuance Notification Act, this hearing is to receive public comments on the authorization to issue general obligation alternative bonds by the board in an amount not to exceed $945 million. The board is scheduled to vote on this matter at its regular meeting later today. Madam Secretary, please state for the record the notice procedure for this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Chicago Sun-Times, a newspaper of general circulation in the city of Chicago, on August 16, 2016, and posted at the boardroom, principal office, 42 West Madison lobby, and on the cpsboe.org website on August 22, 2016. I will now read into the record the public notice as published. Notice of Public Hearing, Board of Education of the City of Chicago Bond Issue Notification Act. Please take notice that the Chicago Board of Education, in parentheses, the Board of the Board of Education of the City of Chicago, the school district, will hold a public hearing on August 24, 2016 at 8:30 a.m. The hearing will be held in the boardroom at the Chicago Public Schools Loop Office, 42 West Madison Street, Garden Level, in the City of Chicago, Illinois. The purpose of the hearing will be to receive public comments on the proposal to sell general obligation unlimited tax alternate bonds of the board in one or more series in the amount of not to exceed $945 million for the purpose of financing the rehabilitation, renovation, construction, and acquisition of school administrative buildings and equipment, site improvements, and other real and personal property in and for the school district, together with other capital improvements to such buildings, equipment, and other real and personal property. I, funding of contract obligations. Roman numeral 3, the purchase of school grounds for the construction of or additions to school buildings, and 4, costs of issuance and other costs and reserves related to the foregoing. Members of the public wishing to provide comment on this proposal should register at the first floor of the Madison Street lobby between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. on August 24, 2016, dated August 16, 2016. Estella G. Beltran, Secretary, Chicago Board of Education. Thank you. Mr. President, I will now like to note for the record the members that are present here today for this hearing. And we have Member Furlong.
Present.
Vice President Guzman.
Present.
Member Dr. Hines.
Present.
Member Ward.
Present.
Member Father Garanzini.
Present.
President Clark.
Present.
Thank you. 6 members present. We have a quorum, and I would also like to recognize Forrest Claypool, our CEO, and Ron Marmer, our General Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Let's begin with the presentation for the issuance of the Bond Issuance Notification Act. That will be by our Senior Vice President for Finance, Ron Denard.
Good morning, Board. Ron Denard, SVP of Finance. So I would like to do a brief presentation on our BINA hearing. So really, since 1988, state statute prescribes the process for authorizing alternate GO bonds for all school districts. There are 3 steps to the process. We are taking the first 2 steps today. We must come back to the board for approval to actually issue any bonds. So the first step is the actual BINA hearing, which we are in. And this seeks public comment on the proposed authorization and the backup property tax levy that supports the bonds once they are issued. The second step is the board approving the authorization. And this is authorization that's good for 3 years and up to the amount that we are talking about. The third step is when we come back to the board with details on what we actually would issue, the bond issuance that we would actually place. Again, I want to stress that we do have to come back to the board in order to actually issue the bonds. CPS may not issue all of the 945. That is just an authorization, an umbrella authorization up to 945. And very important to note, the next bond issuance that we will come to the board with to finance our capital projects for 2017, these bonds have a dedicated repayment source that has already been levied. It was levied last year. We're already collecting it. And when we issue those bonds, they will not, I repeat, will not impact the operating budget because it's a separate, dedicated repayment source, a property tax levy that started last year. We're already collecting it. So when we issue those bonds, they will not impact the operating budget at all. And just to note, we have our 2017 capital budget is $338 million. The funding sources are the CIT bonds that I just spoke about, TIF funding, and some federal funding, and that makes up the $338 million of our 2017 capital budget. Are there any questions?
Board members, questions for Ron?
No.
Ron, I appreciate your emphasizing, both for the board and for the public, that this is an authorization of up to a specific amount for a specific period of time, that individual issuances will have to come back to the board for their approval. Okay, if there are no other questions, let's proceed with the public comment segment. Madam Secretary, please share the rules for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, I would like to note that registration for the public hearing was held between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. this morning. Individuals who registered to speak will have 2 minutes to comment, and I will call the speakers in order of registration. The hearing will conclude after the last person who has signed in to speak has spoken, or at 9 a.m., whichever occurs first. When called, please state your name, and Mr. President, I'll proceed by calling the first speaker, and we have speaker number 1, please, Breen Siebert, followed by the second speaker, Sarah Haynes.
Good morning. My name
Morning.
is Bryn Seibert, and I'm a vice president with SEIU Healthcare Illinois and the director of our Child Care and Early Learning Division. SEIU is also a part of the Bright Future Coalition, which calls for universal, free, high-quality child care and early learning for all families in the city of Chicago. Without new revenue, CPS is doing nothing more than playing shell games with early childhood education, taking money from preschoolers instead of taking money from wealthy developers. Specifically, CPS plans to use $10 million in new money from the state, money that is specifically earmarked to expand pre-K, to fill the hole created by moving early childhood Title I dollars into K through 12 funding. So this tactic is legally questionable at best, with state law mandating that early childhood block grant funding and state preschool dollars should not be used to supplant other funding sources, which would include federal Title I dollars. So this is just another example of Mayor Rahm Emanuel's broke on purpose governing, in which the mayor intends to use pre-K funds to pay for public schools instead of taxing banks and developer profits. This is unacceptable, and we need new revenue. We need sufficient revenue to pay for K through 12 education and to pay for early childhood education for the families who need it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Ms.
very
Siebert.
much.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker, please.
Hi, Sarah Haynes from Chicago Teachers Union. We have two main issues with using this bond money, even if it's supposedly not going to add to the debt, which is getting out of control. It's 10% of the budget right now. Just 20 years ago, it was only 2% of the budget. We should not be spending 10% of our annual budget going to debt repayment, which is just going to the profits of the banks. The issue is we have access to TIF money, and CPS isn't doing anything to push the mayor on this. Cook County Clerk David Orr just declared that the 2015 TIF revenue was up by 24% over 2014, which is $100 million more dollars than the mayor anticipated. There's now $460 million in the TIF pot. So there's a new ordinance in City Hall submitted by Alderman Cardenas and Sue Garza, which would send the entire TIF surplus to CPS for capital. So, every year, the mayor declares a surplus when he decides to declare a surplus, and the amount of the surplus is declared by him. We want an automatic setup, so surplus will always come to CPS for capital. Secondly, the reason why we need to borrow, and we do this every year, is because we do not have a capital plan. We are required by law to have a 10-year facility master plan updated every 2.5 years with detailed 5-year plans updated every year. And this does not happen. The capital plan that was released in July doesn't even have any details in it, doesn't have any information, doesn't include all of the housing and development that's happening around the city and all the anticipated children that will be coming into the system. I, for one, live in Bridgeport. There are single-family homes popping up like crazy on vacant land. All those children will have to go to a school, and if we don't plan
Ms.
for
Haynes,
it.
thank you. Thank you for your comments. Mr. President, this concludes the public segment comment.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Our board members, do you have any questions on any of the remarks made during the public comment segment? Seeing that there are no questions, then this concludes the bond authorization hearing, and with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.